Welcome, Eric. All right, y'all. Well, welcome to today's meeting on January 22nd for the State Levels and Systems Policy Committee meeting. Today, we now have enough representatives to officially establish a quorum. So we are going to continue by starting with the agenda. So today, and members, Kathleen had put this in the chat. We're gonna briefly talk about the draft SEL standards, debrief the January absenteeism panel, talk about the report card and final steps with that, before talking about the committee's strategic goals and work planning for the upcoming year, particularly for the upcoming spring. And we will close out before any new business around the 2024 meeting schedule. Does anyone have any questions about the agenda before we jump in? All right. So our first item of business are the draft social emotional learning standards. Our goal right now for a moment is to decide on an approach to developing and sharing feedback with OSSI. So one thing that I'd like to flag for the committee is that the Office of the Student Advocate has also done work on safety and anti-bullying instruction, and they would like to be looped in with our recommendations so that we're able to communicate both from our perspective in the state board, but also from the Office of Student Advocate in revising and updating the draft standards. The first question that I have for us to kind of ponder is, what is our preferred method of providing feedback on the standards? Are we talking about email or survey? Any particular things in terms of preferred method of feedback on the standards?
Just for a little bit of context on that, the part of the reason we're discussing this is I know a lot of members felt a little bit rushed with how the financial literacy recommendations were developed, and I know I felt a little bit rushed too. So having more planning about how members are going to give feedback, how we're going to review those recommendations and finalize them, should help that process be smoother for everybody.
So, Ben, are you opening it up just for us to discuss this then?
Yeah, jump on in.
Okay. Well, let me ask, actually, I'll ask Kathleen and Bernice maybe, who is the point of contact at the board that the recommendations are then going to flow through? Would it be you, Kathleen? How is that going to work?
Yeah, so currently, this is the work of the committee. So the committee is going to work to develop recommendations, and I will be supporting you all in doing that. So for financial literacy, I had people read the draft and then send me thoughts, and then I compiled those along with things we heard during like testimony that we got.
Yeah, that sounds great. And so I put this up on my newsletter, and that goes out to all the listservs and everything to solicit feedback, but I'm linking it through right now, at least on this one, OSSI's website. Do we get to see those the feedback that comes through OSSI's website? Did they share that with us at all or not?
They have not shared it yet.
Okay.
But I believe they will share it. I believe but yeah, that would be like at a working session.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful if they would share those results, because I could also then list you as like a contact person if people have feedback to flow through, like from Ward 3. But it would probably be good to have them share that existing portal, because I looked through it myself. It's a good setup, and that way we can reach out to folks who want to comment. But I just want to make sure that as the comments flow in, they're getting to the person at the agency, who's going to be able to compile them and then make recommendations, for the committee. So that would be you then, and the best way. Should we put your email on there, or do you think the OSSI web format is the best right now? What's the best way that works for you, Kathleen, on this?
So the deadline for OSSI's form is actually tonight.
Okay.
So going forward, it would have to be like me or the state board's general email.
What would your preference be in that, do you think?
Bernice, is that your hand up?
Yes, it is. Well, I would just say that Kathleen does collect the committee's feedback. And then you all generate a recommendation, and then it goes to the board. At that point, once it goes to the board and people have other things they have to say or other feedback, other pieces based on the recommendations you all have put forth, they share those in some type of document that gets back to Kathleen, and she combines them or updates the overall recommendation. And then I send it to OSSI, which goes directly to Dr. Grant with Andrew CC.
I mean, it sounds great. I just want to make sure that as, you know, teachers and members of the public want to comment and provide suggestions, that we just have a way they do that. So that's helpful to know that we can then, since that form's going to expire, I guess at the end of tomorrow, we send it through to.
Today. 11:59 today.
Oh, 11. Oh gosh. Oh, so
Yeah.
this is it. Okay, I'm glad I got that out there then, so people could comment through the form. But we'll then in the future then, and maybe suggest they send any further comments through you. And what is your deadline that you would set forth then, so that the committee and the board can vote? What's your timeline look like?
But part of that is the discussion we want to have today in terms of
Okay.
how long does the committee want to review feedback, and so we can kind of backwards plan. OSSI has, my understanding is they said that they will not be discussing it at the February working session. So my thought was at the February committee meeting, to kind of finalize the recommendations. So we can, you know, work from now until then to plan what the times would have to be.
That sounds great. I'll turn it back to our chair here then, and I appreciate getting to weigh in on that. Thank you.
Definitely. And then Kathleen, is that assuming that we're gonna get no new information from OSSI on the financial literacy standards or on the social emotional learning standards?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that's on the agenda for the February working session because we have financial literacy and the report card.
That is correct. OSSI has made it very clear they will not be talking about social emotional learning at the working session in February.
Okay. So I think either by the next committee meeting or even by March, we still should be good to be able to compile our feedback. Because OSSI won't be presenting on it again until I imagine the March working session meeting.
Yeah.
All right. Does the committee want to do any public engagement regarding the draft standards? Are there any thoughts around that? Students, I kind of wanted to propose an idea with that and would love to hear you weigh in. I think that like getting student voice on this issue is critically important. So I was actually wondering if like the SAC might want to take a lead in being able to, whether it be survey students or you know, just talk about it at your meetings, to be able to weigh in on what these standards look like at different grade levels.
I think that'd be a great idea. I can mention it at our next SAC meeting. I don't know about like a specific student engagement event, like how we had with our past public engagement sessions. But I think both would be great. So I'll definitely bring it up at the next SAC meeting. Well, we will.
Taya, should we try to do something like that?
Like an event?
Like, yeah.
I think that would be good. So we could get like loads of student feedback at one time instead of having like forcing our kind of committee members to have to go out and survey as many students, just so that like they still have a chance to breathe almost.
Yeah. And I think
Enjoy.
also like a lot of our members are concentrated in 2 or 3 schools. So,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, that's just kind of the way it happens. So I think our feedback from the SAC might tend to be sort of from one perspective.
Yeah.
So it might not be a bad idea to branch out. But we can figure this out in our own time.
Thank you both. Executive Director Buller, do you still want to weigh in?
Oh, no, the only thing I was gonna say, but this is totally different. I know that the any kind of standards that are being proposed by IC, SEL or anything, they cannot get passed if they don't go to the SAC and get feedback. So they too are required to go.
Got it. Thanks for that note. Students, yeah, I would encourage you, this might be a great way to like reach out to other like points of contacts for students, whether it be, you know, student government associations or like any other clubs that are really popular at other schools around the city to kind of get feedback. I don't see the need for the committee to hold a particular public engagement on this. But I'm open to ideas. So um Representative Chang or Goulet, do you want to weigh in at all before we move forward?
I would second that. I think it'd be great. I think a lot of times, with our student advisory committee, they're getting resolutions, right before the vote. I think having an extra month built in where they would be able to discuss it at their meeting, kind of go through the standards, and then maybe you'll have time to recommend things that we then could consider getting in there as the board members. The one thing I would ask you all is, would it be helpful to try to get a presentation maybe from OSSI to the Student Advisory Committee? That sounds like it might be really beneficial, uh, to have someone come speak, to you, explain what it is, and then the students can then ask questions. I know they ask a lot of great questions when I'm there, about resolutions that we have. So I think that would be just a suggestion, maybe to get a month of engagement in for our youth who can approach this from a perspective, of students who are on the ground experiencing these issues right in their school. So that's just a thought I have.
Yeah, I think and I said this because like they've already been. I think IC may already have that in their plan because like they've already done the financial literacy standards twice for the SAC. And so they usually build in multiple presentations because they want to incorporate their feedback. I don't know if they're planning the same thing for the SEL standards, but I know like they went in December to the SAC meeting about financial literacy. They went back to tell them the changes that they've incorporated when they went back in January. So if they follow the same template, they would at least build it in 2 months of engagement with the SAC. But there's no guarantee of that. That is something we can ask them.
Yeah, I would definitely support pushing for that because I think it's one thing for them to present to the SAC. It's another thing for them to present in a meaningful way, giving the students then time to actually ask questions and then provide feedback, which I think would be really beneficial on something like this, that they would be able to, give us great on the ground advice on how to improve. So I think that works for me.
Thanks, Representative Goulet. Um, I'm gonna move us along to debriefing the January absenteeism panel.
Can I ask one more question regarding the SEL?
Go for it.
So just going back to the first question you asked a little bit was about how members prefer to share feedback. Because I know I've asked for you all to send it to send me an email for financial literacy, and for social studies I ask people to fill out a form. And then for the report card, I have like office hour sessions of members could come in, share their thoughts. I got some different turnout for different ways to do it. So I didn't know if you had a way that you all preferred to share your feedback so that I could be doing that rather than just picking one.
Yeah, I mean, my preference is a form is always useful too, but I'm happy to do that, or just an email and review the standards independently to then share my thoughts with you for the committee to compile them.
I'll just say for me, Kathleen, I really like the way you've been doing it, of sending it out, getting to review the document. And then if I do have any questions or concerns, I get back to you. But, what you've been producing has been really great. So I haven't had, any feedback that I felt, needed to be shared on some of these documents. If there is, obviously, I'll get in touch with you. And I appreciate the work you did on our, fantastic Green New Deal for schools there. That was really great. So That's just really, that would be the way that would be most helpful to me. I like to be able to look at it, see the changes as they're made, and then if there's any concerns we have, to get back in touch with you. But I think it's been A+ work so far. So if we keep doing what we're doing, I think we're on the right track.
Thank you both. So just to kind of have some conversation, the next two questions we can kind of take up together. Like, what were your biggest takeaways from Wednesday's panel on the absenteeism and truism challenges in our city? And then what issues around absenteeism should the committee follow up on? Anyone in particular want to start?
I'll be glad to weigh in unless anybody else wants to first. And I'm going to talk about my Ward 2 colleagues' idea, which I really found profound at the last one of these meetings, which was that we should do our role in this. I feel like there's, between the two hearings, the one we held and then the one the council held on it, that there was a lot of great ideas, all of which should be implemented at once. But I think we should kind of take the bull by the horns as the state board and try to look at curriculum changes that would make the students feel more engaged. I think that's the one area that's really in our statutory purview. So it makes the most sense that we try to do some work there and talk to students and find out what they think would make them more excited to be able to attend school. So, and somebody corrected me, standards, not curriculum. Yes, thank you. Thank you. That's a helpful correction. Yeah, I gotta get the terminology correct. So yes, and I agree with that 100%. So as we do that, let's make sure that we do our role in truancy versus trying to solve everything. Because I think it's a big problem that I think one thing that my takeaway from the hearing is that we're not even doing the things that are statutorily required now or required through regulation. And the DCPS needs to do those things, which it did commit to do at the hearing. But I mean, everything from safe passages to out of school time to making sure we have a social service safety net that's connected at the schools, school-based mental health are all great things, but they're all things that are not within our purview. So let's do what we should be doing and try to focus on that. That's my thoughts.
Gotcha. And to build off of that, Representative Goulet, like, so in terms of the standards, to me, right, like as an educator, teachers are responsible for making those standards come to life every day to make sure students are engaged through the lessons and the assignments and the curriculum that we teach. So to me, there's also like a big connection here with like turnover, because I think if students don't feel connected to their teachers, and don't feel a sense of community in schools, then there's also less reason to show up. So that'd be something that I'd like for us to kind of frame as we think about that moving forward. And also the thing that stood out to me was the need to really have updated public data on the issue. And I would like for us to collaborate with OSSI, whether, I don't know what makes sense, whether it just be a resolution or even if they're willing to take this up independently. But I think there's some urgency, not to shame schools or not to necessarily be punitive in any way, but to really be able to address the issues in real time. Because I think our schools are really strapped with regards to feeling worn thin, and to the degree that we can help them get useful information that can help them reach students and families that are not attending school regularly, I think that would be something that would have a big impact. So I don't know what form that takes, other than just like communicating that to OSSI at the upcoming meeting or crafting a resolution. But I think that is something that we should be clear about recommending.
I really appreciate you raising that. I think it is. And the teacher retention issue in Ward 3 is a real problem because we have overcrowding issues. And then we also just have kind of a sense of people just not feeling appreciated when we have a chancellor who won't even meet with our teachers to discuss a contract. The contract is expired again. And there just is absolutely no excuse for the chancellor not sitting down and meeting directly with the teachers. I mean, when I did these labor negotiations and was involved with them, typically the manager would start the meetings with the employees. They'd have a very high level discussion. They try to reach consensus. And then from there, afterwards, the staff would then work through the issues. So it's just very odd that the chancellor won't meet with the teachers. It's very concerning that we now have the teachers working without a contract again. And even more alarming that another budget is coming up where if this is not funded in the fiscal year 25 budget, we could be 2 years behind in terms of funding our teachers. And that's why we had these huge cuts last year, because our teachers were 4 years behind or 3.5 years behind on getting paid. So I do, Representative Williams, I echo that 100%. And I think one thing we can do is continue to be vocal on this at council hearings and wherever we go. We've already passed a resolution on it. And to me, it's really frustrating, but I would love the data on teacher retention to check in again on what the issues are. And if that's what you would like to take up, I'm certainly 100% supportive of that in this committee. So thanks for raising it.
Thank you, Representative Goulet. Students, do you care to weigh in on what stood out to you from the panel and what you think the committee or the state board should focus on moving forward with regards to this issue?
I personally don't have anything specific. The only thing I was going to think of was the more data, and we all touched on that, and also out of school time programming, and we just passed a resolution. So I don't have many additional comments.
Yeah, I'm with Tay. I think the out of school time programming is really important though.
So, what I would invite both of you to, I was going to try to meet with the out of school time coalition soon. I was trying to do it before the holidays, but then it just didn't come together. I mean, what I ideally would love to see would be, since funds are tight this year, would be to try to look for either a school or a neighborhood to begin an expansion on this. And I think if we can come up with a much more concrete proposal where we can try to really drive outcomes in maybe a neighborhood that's really seeing high truancy or high crime, we can try to push to start the funding of this universal out of school time proposal. And I think the more specifics we have, the better. So, I mean, if it would be something even where we were going to talk to youth in a particular area, and get the mayor and their team on board with this, I think we got a lot better chance of getting something funded through the budget, because this is going to take dollars, money's tight, and I think we're going to have trouble getting out of school time funding in the budget if it's just for an ethereal concept versus like, we're going to target this school with this programming and have some real plans for how we roll it out in school year 24, 25, if we can. So I would love to work with you on that. And I'd invite you to the meeting too we would have with those partners if you'd be interested in attending it, because I think your voice is really helpful on this, because we want to create programming that students actually want to attend and participate in.
I would love to be in that meeting. I mean, me personally, Representative Goulet, I love the out of school time program. I think it's one of the most promising ways to limit truancy and chronic absenteeism. I think the SAC as a whole, when you left the room to discuss it, was really in support of OST. And I would love to be in the conversation. I'm sure that a lot of the SAC members would as well. So I would, yeah, I mean, shoot me an email and we can talk about how to set up some discussion about that.
That's fantastic. And I will say this is to kind of rabble rouse partly, but also I think to get the SAC involved in this. One of the things where you, I think, can really help drive these issues is testifying at council hearings, because having a strong voice there matters. I've been really frustrated with the fact that council's kind of limited public engagement the last couple of years in a way that I find to be inappropriate. But I think if we can get the members of the SAC to speak out in individual capacities, in terms of issues they care about, like out of school time program, it'll be really powerful to drive that conversation in the direction, to actually get things done. So that would be really something I would love to work with you on. And it's a passion of mine, is out of school time. And if you all want to help try to fight for it, I'm with you 100% on it.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Representative Glay, that sounds like a great plan. Keep if you could just keep us in the loop. But I'm wondering too, and I'd like to kind of get the rest of the board's take on this at the public meeting. Just on what data transparency we can get with regards to um, you know, updates from Aussie on a regular basis. Can we get quarterly updates on attendance numbers, at minimum, right? And so I don't know, Executive Director Butler or Kathleen or Representative Chang, if you have any thoughts on how to move that forward with regards to a particular ask from Aussie outside of just crafting a resolution.
Well, I think one of the ways, we meet with Dr. Grant on a monthly basis. So we can always send stuff in advance of that meeting. I know we always send an email to Andrew. So if there's a formal request on behalf of the board, we can definitely submit that to Dr. Grant and her team as we send the agenda for the meeting so that we can specifically discuss that topic and have them come prepared to answer questions about it. But if it's something specifically that you want to hear about at the working session, we can send an email to that effect also, because the working session separate from the leadership call it's more members, obviously.
Right.
But
And that meeting is the second Monday of the month.
yes,
Gotcha. So I think given where we are in January, it's something that I want to get people's opinion on at the public meeting, but then to request that that be brought up in the leadership meeting with Dr. Grant in February. And I know that Vice President Patterson was really passionate about searching for action on this issue too. So I hope that he could bring up his concerns then as well.
will do. Thank you.
Yes. Any other outstanding questions around truancy or absenteeism that you felt the panel didn't discuss, or any other routes of action that you think the committee needs to pursue? All right. Hearing no comments, I'm going to move us right along. So the next item on our agenda is briefly debriefing the report card. So our goal for this is not to open up a big conversation of things that we've already discussed, but just to ensure that the committee is clear on the remaining process and to flag any outstanding concerns. So we have compiled a lot of feedback from different members, including the SAC. And Kathleen, is there a set plan on when we are sending that to Aussie?
So the deadline for members to send their feedback on the committee's recommendations was last Tuesday, because it was a holiday. And so in the past week, I've been taking those and integrating them with the committee's recommendations, since it's now the work of the full board rather than just the committee. And so I finished a draft of that earlier today, and I'm going to share with Jen and Bernice for their review over the next couple of days. And then it will go out to members to review again, because there were some more substantial changes. So this wouldn't be like adding a bunch of new stuff, but if maybe I didn't capture your feedback correctly, or something like that, or if you have you don't agree with what one of the other members suggested to add on, that would be kind of what that is, just to make sure all the members are on board before signing.
Got it.
And so I can, I don't know if Bernice, you want to commit to a timeline today, because also Jen is out right now. She'll be back tomorrow, but we can follow up with that.
I do think that the goal was to send it to them so that they can prepare and come to the working session based on any feedback. So the sooner we can get that letter to them, the better. So hopefully this week, we can get that letter out, because we want them to be able to respond to the feedback by the February meeting.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
Be looking for that later this week.
Thank you. Yeah, and Executive Director Bella, I just want to underscore that goal because I think that, you know, in order to have the best conversation that we can with them, I'd love for them to like the work that we've done is extensive, and I'd love for them to be able to review that prior to coming to the meeting. The only other things that came to mind for me in reviewing what we had compiled was just moving up certain issues that I felt like were deprioritized around school safety and a couple other issues, but those should be coming to everyone in the feedback that Kathleen has sent, but nothing super significant that we haven't already discussed.
In
Yep.
the finalized version, like with the social studies and the financial literacy, I'm attaching all of the public testimony and the panelist testimony that we've received, which wasn't in the draft because that would make it like 70 pages, and you know, we were all there, so we don't need to review it, but all of that will be attached with the finalized version.
Thank you, Kathleen. So, Representative Chang, Goulet, student reps, are you okay if I move us on to our strategic goals?
Sure.
Thanks. So, in particular, President Thompson, past Vice President O'Leary, you know, had requested that we at least give them somewhat of a vision at the upcoming public meeting around what the priority topics and tasks are for our committee. So you know, there are a lot of important things for us to be able to tackle. So just wanted to kind of get people's opinions on what topics are most important for the committee to prioritize in the next few months. The one that has fallen on my plate that I'm happy to continue leading on is the high school voter registration contest and campaigns. And that's one thing that I want to flag for us and would appreciate anyone else who's willing to kind of work and support on that. But just wanted to open it up briefly for topics and tasks that we see as important in the next couple months.
And I'm seeing in the chat here, we've got this list of things here, including school nurses, which I think is something that's really important. We got a lot of testimony.
Yeah, these are topics that were mentioned either in the pre-work for the December meeting or during the December meeting or during the working session the January one. And I believe you said school nurses. So
I guess I would ask.
why do you think it's important?
I think it's important. I guess what the goal of this is important to me as to what are we trying to do? Like, are these policies we're just recommending that are important? Like school nurses to me doesn't have much to do with state education and planning. I mean, it's important for our school system, but it's not. So like, should we be prioritizing things that are more in our lane? Like school nurses, I will pursue because I think it's important, but like one of the issues is loan repayment, increasing funding for school nurses, which doesn't seem to be in our lane. Like, I feel like we should be doing things that kind of are within our purview. I don't know. That would just be my thought. I like the idea of doing the the education standards, and then I also like the idea potentially of what you talked about, Representative Williams, of doing the teacher retention, kind of trying to figure out how we do that. But other things that like I'd look to your guidance on this, but other things like the out of school time, I think is important, but should that be something that we necessarily take on as a committee, or would we do it more individually and at the board level? I feel like the committee should focus on committee things and it should focus on state policy, not everything.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the thing, and I've been trying to get more clarity from the council on the retention things that do fall squarely within our purview is, what's the best path forward? Like the state board has studied this, ASI studied this. I really do feel like we're in a place of action with some of these things, but at the same time, we could study different evaluation systems. I know that like Empower Ed has taken the lead with this recently with their report, and looking at what works across different charter schools, knowing that like every LEA is going to implement teacher evaluation and teacher support in different ways. That's a big part of retention, because if teachers feel like they're growing and they feel supported and they feel like the culture is helping them as professionals, they're more likely to stay in the classroom. So I don't want to necessarily reinvent the wheel with certain things around the retention, but I am willing to tackle new pieces of the puzzle that we feel like could be useful for supporting our school communities. Anyone want to weigh in on that? Or my question is really the urgency of it. Like, when would it be best for us to work on that?
I think now, because we really have an issue with the budget coming up in a matter of just months. So if there are things that we can recommend that could be part of that, we should try to do so. And I think one of the most important things is making sure we have workforce investment funding in there for the contract, and speaking out about that. I mean, that's not a state level issue, but I think it's going to be really important. Otherwise, our teachers are going to not be paid. So that's a big deal. And then, just putting absenteeism truancy on the list. That's my number one. So.
Yeah, I'm definitely think that we need to see how the rest of the board would like to move forward with that too. Students or Representative Chang, any additional issues? So far, what I've gathered is just three in particular, Kathleen. So one, the voter outreach with the high school voter registration campaign, the continued kind of unclear focus, but knowing that we need to continue to work on the teacher retention issue, and then the absentee and truancy issue.
Can I ask on the voter retention though? Because this seems to me to like figuring out the structure of these committees. I feel like that's kind of an overall board issue that you could just deal with at the overall board. I mean, I would think the purpose of these committees is to try to delve deeply into certain specific issues, like, and this is kind of state level policy issues. I mean, that's an important issue that you raised there, but I mean, is it really something that would even flow through the committee, or would that just be something you would handle, working with, the Board of Elections and folks like that? I don't know how that fits into like a committee work plan. I'm just trying to figure out like what should the role of a committee be? My feeling would be it should capture very important, very thematic issues that reflect what the committee should be doing, and then we should try to go a little bit deeper into those. I like teacher retention. I like, the absenteeism truancy issue from looking at standards. Like school nurses is important, out of school time is important. I just don't see how they fit into the role of this committee's jurisdiction. And I'm trying to learn this as we go with y'all.
No, I'm with you. I think that and I appreciate the push for clarity. I think, to me, that like there will be work that I will take on as an individual member with regards to the project, but I think that the systemic policy connection is the fact that other states have data around youth registration, and we don't. So to whatever extent possible, I've been talking with the deputy mayor's office and maybe even the secretary of state, but looking at how we create a policy that is citywide to encourage voter registration drives and to encourage students to become informed voters. Because I'd hate for, certain private schools or certain schools in certain parts of the city to have access to those things, but not to really have a clear policy as to how we are engaging youth across the city to develop the habit of voting. Does that make sense, Representative Goulet?
I mean, it does. I just, I still kind of, I guess I'm still going back to the original point. It's like we have two basic committees on this state board. And I would put yours almost in the school well-being almost as much as I would this one. And I have no objection to the issue. I think it's really important to do. I'm trying to, as we grow our institution, figure out what the purpose of these committees are. And what I think it should be is to try to, go deeper down into some of the issues related to the committee's business. Like, I just don't feel like school nurses is under this committee. I don't feel like out of school time is. I'm still struggling on the voter registration to feel how it links to this. And I think we should tackle like one or two big issues that we really agree on that really reflect what this committee is about, and then try to do those well within the year. Like, and I think one or two is all we're gonna be able to have time to do from just a staff capacity and a timing capacity. I mean, for me, absenteeism and truancy should be like a focus, and I think we got time for like one more. So I think we should come to the board with a couple concrete things that we really plan to get done with detail and with an end goal. That's just my thoughts. No, nothing against your proposal. I mean, I think that's great. I just don't see how it fits in with still what the committee's work plan would be. But I mean, I'll wrap it up. I don't think we need to decide that right now, so we'll move along. I don't want to take too much time.
And no, I appreciate that. I'm not that's clear to me. I think that there's a possibility, right, too, that committee membership might change in the upcoming year with now Vice President Patterson being a part of the administrative committee. So I would like for there to be particular chunks of work that are like concrete and tangible that you're talking about. And I am definitely on board with having a more clearly defined purpose with regards to outcomes for truancy and for teacher retention. And I think that those are both two important things that could allow us to go deeper and to try and influence the different trajectories on those issues for our city. Representative Chang, is there anything for us to flag with regards to literacy in the near future other than just budget funding? You can jump in at a later time if necessary.
He just put something in the chat saying nothing new on literacy coming up for state level.
Got it. And then students, is there any topic that you feel like, from your experience or other things that you're hearing at your schools or other students that you feel like the committee should prioritize?
Sorry, Tate, you wanna go ahead?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I don't know, I haven't heard this from students like around me, but I just wanted to bring up Miss Bernstad Leaves testimony from our last meeting and maybe prioritize getting some of those regulations in place.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, we are planning to maybe do because lately our meetings have been really stacked with resolutions and presentations from Mossy and other committees. I think we are planning to have some sort of meeting or session where we establish our priorities. We gave a survey last session to see what students thought were the most important issues, and the most important ones I think were teacher retention and school safety. So when we find time in between resolutions and presentations, we're gonna try to find ways to elaborate on those and figure out what's most concerning to students and what they think we can do moving forward. To try to so that when we get that question of what's important to students, we have clear answers moving forward. So in the next couple of months, we'll definitely have some things that we definitely want to bring to you guys.
Thank you. Any other points from members or any other issue that you'd like to raise, Kathleen, before I move us into finalizing our meeting schedule?
I would just say, I think it might be helpful for the committee to not necessarily right now decide on what the action items are gonna be to approach teacher retention and absenteeism. But like think about when you want to have that, because I know some of these things are time sensitive. Like Representative Goodlay, you mentioned the budget. That's like a specific timeline that we have to be working within. And so maybe that could be like a follow-up item or something for members to identify if there are any specific dates for some of those. But you know, I don't want it to be like right now people mention they want to do absenteeism and then next month nothing has happened and people say, yeah, we want to work on absenteeism. Like I want to make sure those specifics are going to be decided upon, so it's not going to like pass us by. So I don't know if you want to think about how you want to do that, if you want to do it during a meeting or if you want that to be like work in between the meetings. I think like a plan would be helpful, so it definitely happens.
I can quickly, I think, answer that. So I think from my standpoint on this, I would hope we just pick 2 or 3 things. One, we already have that we know we need to be doing social and emotional learning standards. And we have some key deadlines on that we just laid out. I mean, for me, I think the goal on doing something on truancy, I mean, should be a goal of this committee for the year. I feel like as a committee, we're designed to look at specific issues in issue areas, and that's one of the biggest crises in the city. It falls under our board's purview. So I think we should set goals for the year, and that to me would be to try to get an end product on that by the end of the year, which would be looking at ways to improve standards to make students feel more engaged during the school day with what they're learning. So that would be, for me, a year-long project. I feel like, you know, Representative Williams will probably give his own timeline on the teacher issues. I think some of the issues maybe that I raised there, you know, the more I think about it, aren't things that really would flow through the committee, but more individual advocacy for members. And I think this, when we do our retreat, we should really think about this, is I think when we set committees, we should set them with some really achievable goals and not a hodgepodge of different goals, so that we can really, as a board with limited staff, then focus on 2 or 3 things that require research and that are really within our statutory bailiwick that we can then propose. Like, I just don't want the committees to be like, you know, I've got one passion, Representative Williams got a passion. Now, Representative Chang's passion actually is within the purview of this committee 100%, because he's got the literacy. But I think that should be the focus, is finding 2 or 3 things that we really think we can get done this year, and not a bunch of things. And then we actually get those done. Because I feel like sometimes we just like come up with a big list. Like I don't want nurses on there, even though it's really important to me, because it doesn't have anything to do with this committee's purview, and it's something the board should handle just on its own. So otherwise we shouldn't even make committees.
I agree with your main point there, Representative Goulet, around just finding 2 or 3 things that we should really hone in on and focus on. So let's I echo that, Kathleen, and we can try and get specifics for February's meeting. So that's actually a good segue into February's meeting. So we wanted to just try to have a standing time right now so that we can all plan around. And thank you, Representative Chang, for, you know, your thoughts there on agreeing to a couple issues and going deeper on those. Is everyone fine right now to continue this Monday time for the 3rd, or I guess the 4th Monday of the month? Kind of situates us nicely between the week after the public meeting and a week before the working session.
It works great for me.
Great. All right. Any others want to thank you, Representative Chang? So having gotten to this section, is there any final new business for today before we adjourn? All right, hearing nothing, I'll close this out. Thank you all for your participation and attendance today. And I look forward to following up with people to clarify how we're going to move forward on these issues.
Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.